Good afternoon and welcome to the WAVY Digital Desk. Today we are speaking about the 2 years since the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And we have on today from the Tidewater Ukrainian Cultural Association, amongst others, Dr. Anna Makhorkina. I'm going to bring her on and introduce her as well. Dr. Anna Makhorkina, so I want to give her full title because she is important in our community and has, a lot of weight. So she's the president of the Tidewater Ukrainian Cultural Association, a faculty member at Old Dominion University, and a professor of international relations. So it's a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I know that this anniversary cannot be easy, going into the 2-year date that is tomorrow. But if you would, just going back 2 years ago, can you just, set up maybe what that feeling was like 2 years ago tomorrow?
Absolutely. I feel like I woke up with that same feeling, almost same feeling that I did 2 years ago, because leading up to the full-scale invasion on February 24th, our American Ukrainian community here in Hampton Roads has already started to plan events, awareness and educational events to bring attention to what was happening on Russia-Ukraine border, to bring attention to the narrative that Russia kept pushing for weeks, and also, of course, based on information that we did have here from our media on the ground in the United States, from analysis of the different sources, because the talk was for weeks, if not months, leading up to the full-scale invasion, that the war is very likely. And then, of course, when American Ukrainian community members would call our relatives in Ukraine, they seemed to be so hopeful and just being Ukrainians, living their lives day to day, hardworking, family values, democratic values, not believing that something like this could ever happen in our 21st century, with 80 years of uninterrupted peace in Europe. It was inconceivable. So we would talk to my parents live in Ukraine, they still are there. We would call them and the brothers, sisters, friends, and they were like, oh, sure, don't worry, and just talk. But again, here we were already planning those events, and it's interesting, our big rally was being planned for February 25th. It was being planned in Norfolk. We got permit. We were planning all these slogans and painted posters. I remember my board was writing a letter to senators and representatives of Virginia, raising awareness and calling them to action to maybe put forward proclamation that would prevent anything horrible happening. And just like now, I remember Wednesday was 23rd. So exactly 2 years ago, we finalized the letter, and I had a draft saved in my email about to be sent that night, and I come home and it was about 10 p.m. or 11, and I go on news websites and it started.
Take your time. I mean, this is obviously an emotional topic, and I can't imagine how difficult it is having family in Ukraine and living with this sort of moment in time where you were planning for something, a few days later, just here in your community to fight against it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just
No, please take your time.
Tears are coming on. So it just and that was basically life before and after. That's how it happened for all Ukrainians, wherever they are, in Ukraine, in anywhere in the world, and of course for our. Oh my goodness.
No, please take your time, and if you need a second to have a sip of water or anything, this is an open conversation. when you
And of
were
course, for our American Ukrainian community here,
right.
literally live before and after, and call to action. Even people who would have been kind of, you know, the most optimistic or just kind of passively observing what's happening just jumped to action. And that rally, we had so many people showing up on Friday. Everything was already set up and people knew about it, so we had time to advertise. People came from Richmond, Williamsburg, from Eastern Shore. We had a couple friends joining us. It was really big, and especially it was Friday. It was like early afternoon, so work day, but people showed up, and uh, news channels showed up. People were driving by, honking, supporting, uh, yelling out, "We support Ukraine." It was really overwhelming. So that was literally 2 years ago, and I cannot believe that 2 years later we are still here in pretty much similar situation, probably worse, because now we, back then it was so unexpected and surreal. Also, no one expected it to last so long. Of course, Russian narrative was we will take Kiev in 2 to 3 days and Ukraine will be ours. On Ukrainian side, it was full of hope that, after a few days, it will all go back to normal, because people still couldn't believe that this is happening and what's even happening. And here, 2 years later, we know exactly what to expect. We know exactly who the enemy is. We know exactly how enemy is thinking and how enemy operates and what the intentions are. Because also at the beginning, Russia was presenting narratives. They used all kinds of excuses to make it sort of validated to the world, even though those excuses were nonsensical to begin with. Like, NATO is pushing us to do it because NATO is enlarging and we don't want Ukraine in NATO because it's our border security. Or we are saving Russian speakers in Ukraine who never even asked or needed to be saved from anything. Or, the whole other narratives that they were defending something, when later on, just over a few weeks, it became very obvious, not only to Ukrainians who knew this all along for centuries, because we lived next to this country for so long, but the rest of the world also saw that all it is really imperialistic, expansionist war of authoritarian regime who has something to prove and reincarnate the previous glory of some previous rulers at the expense of other nations.
And for your parents who are in Ukraine, can you tell us a little bit about that moment for them, what they've experienced over the last 2 years?
I remember the first when I started calling them at around 11 p.m. on February 23rd here, February 24th there. I couldn't reach them for many, many hours. So that was terrifying. When I finally reached them, my parents are just so life loving, optimistic people, and um, God praising, people of faith. So their first answer to me was like, "Oh, we are fine. Don't worry about anything." And just thinking about it, and that was that's how people are, full of hope, full of strength. Um, but again, they were saying it to protect me. But of course, nothing was fine. The situation was dire, and developments were escalating very quickly. And again, my parents live in Western Ukraine, so that's where there was no battle on the ground. My parents are in Lviv. My family is from Lviv, and most of them are there. So it was relatively safe for them. And of course, over time, over the 2 years, nowhere is safe. Uh, East, South, Eastern, and Southern Ukraine are extremely devastated. People live either under occupation or under constant bombing and attacks and purges and torture and just dire war circumstances. So while 2 years ago we were caught by surprise, even though we were preparing for this, it was still total surprise. Now, 2 years later, we are in a dire situation again, and it's mostly what got Ukraine through these 2 years up till now. Of course, unbelievable bravery, resilience, belief in our country. And when I say our in this way, I mean in Ukrainian country, in Ukrainian sovereignty, in Ukrainian independence, in Ukrainian democracy, in Ukrainian people. It was Ukrainian land that Ukrainian defenders were protecting and repelling the occupants and invaders. So that was the main driving force behind it. The Ukrainians were protecting their families back home, their ancestral land. Also, what helped survive and persevere is help from allies and friends abroad. European allies, the United States came through almost immediately. Everyone jumped on. Of course, everyone wishes the aid came sooner and bigger, but of course that help was essential for continued fight, especially as that fight prolonged, when it went beyond those 3 days, when it went beyond those few weeks or 2 months. So right now, and I know many people are aware of situation in Congress with budget, as well as the aid package that is up in the air for approval. And the aid package includes aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The package was approved by Senate last week. However, it was not brought to vote in the House before House went on a break for this 2-week break. They're coming back tomorrow. But even then, it's no way to say when the aid will be put for vote. So the aid to Ukraine is in the air. The aid that was approved by Congress and signed by President for last year is already done. Uh, all that is no longer available. So at this point, military aid from the United States that was counted on for survival by Ukraine is not coming in. And this is very, very difficult situation for Ukraine to understand, but also for us Americans here and American Ukrainian community. It's difficult to understand because we want Ukraine to survive so much, not just because it's our ancestral land, even though a lot of us lived here for a long time, but also because it's so essential and vital for global security and also for security of the United States. Ukraine is that last bastion before that protects Europe from authoritarian threat from the east, and we cannot let it fall. We cannot let it fall because next is our European allies, our trusted European allies, and when I say our, in this case, it's our American allies, kind of have a dual identity here for
And,
myself.
and I did want to ask about that dual identity and the community here. You talked about the immediate support, the few days after the invasion occurred 2 years ago. Have you seen that? Have you seen it wane? I mean, how do you feel about the support, not just in the Ukrainian-American community, but really in the greater community here in Hampton Roads in supporting you?
So the support in American Ukrainian community is non-waning because we literally wake up with news from Ukraine and go to bed with news from Ukraine. Of course, our close surroundings and our friends and neighbors and communities, they also very well aware because Ukrainian American community members, me including, we just cannot stop talking about it. I appreciate my friends and community support because it must be like if you are not connected personally to a certain issue after 2 years of hearing about it, it probably becomes less interesting to you, but the support of everyone in our communities in Hampton Roads has been strong. And did it decrease? I would say it did, just because it's not on the news all the time. So it is in our surrounding all the time, in person, or again, in our circles of each Ukrainian community member. However, you don't see it on the news. So people who are not connected to, in any way, to Ukrainian narrative, they may be missing out. And we do see cases sometimes, people asking, oh, how is war in Ukraine? Is that over yet? So that kind of makes you realize, oh my goodness, we have to do a better job, maybe talking louder about it or promoting our events, because we do events all the time, from cultural workshops to business networking events where we share information, to congressional advocacy where members of our community travel to Washington, D.C. and meet with our representatives, to bringing meetings with our representatives here to the community, to to many things. Like in December, we brought exhibit War Up Close to Norfolk, and it was hosted at Old Dominion University, and um, I brought it. Me and my colleague from Regent University arranged this traveling exhibit to come to our area. And this is so powerful. It's basically a virtual immersion in situation on the ground in Ukraine, uh, cities that were just liberated from Russian occupation. Uniqueness of the project is that you can see this condition before and immediately after. And you put those Oculus on and you're in it, and you walk the streets of these beautiful towns, flowers blooming, people smiling, uh, kids playing on the playgrounds, and then just in blink of an eye, it's ruin and burned houses, exploded streets, burned down trees. It's almost like watching some movie about World War II results, from my childhood. My parents used to watch these movies, and it's just like apocalypse. uh, I cannot believe this is my Ukraine. I cannot believe this is Ukraine where I grew up and spent time with my grandparents in their garden. It's very moving, very powerful exhibit. I recommend, if it comes to anyone's city here, to go and see it. They travel around the world, and it's a project supported by a group from Kiev, as well as supported by USAID project here.
And then I
That
know
was
that
just
I
like
was.
one.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know that I was showing some footage, but for the sake of the conversation, it obviously shows the devastation, that has happened last 2 years. So I don't think we have to play it the whole time, for all of us to see while we're speaking really about, the community aspect. But, for people that are surprised, and that's hard to hear, that people are surprised the war is going on. I remember just being on the other side of it, watching the news and it coming on 2 years ago, and seeing the coverage every day of people leaving the country, of people going into the country, to help with the effort. Are you saddened by people not understanding that the war is going on? I mean, you're offering these exhibits and events to, sort of bolster, the news and the effort here, but I'm sure that takes a lot of strength, when somebody comes up to you and says, oh, is the war still going on? And you're here experiencing it every day.
Well, it takes some self control on my part not to say what I actually think about this person. Like, hey, don't you like read newspapers? Like, I get it, but there's really no time for being insulted or offended or sad anymore. It's like just sheer uh, drive to make sure you do everything possible you can here in this moment of time to maybe make a tiny, tiny contribution somewhere that in Ukraine, it may help out and bring them closer to victory. Of course, we are not extremely big community here, but I mean, we are sizable. I think it's very big community compared to other places, like many hundred people, several hundred people, um, just in our smaller Hampton Roads area. But there is greater Hampton Roads, much bigger community that, again, we're all united and connected. And when we do fundraisers, we work with communities on the ground in Ukraine. So we know that our aid uh, goes directly to them, and we know exactly the impact that aid does to those communities, whether it's helping orphanages or elderly people with medications, or helping people get generators to survive winter, like we did last winter, or providing other supplies, tactical and medical supplies where it's needed for field hospitals, for really, we get requests, and what we can, we try to support, and we support it through either fundraisers and communities, or workshops that are also fundraisers. Um, Look, anything we can do, organizing the lectures, organizing events and get-togethers, and talking about it and explaining what is happening.
And
Really, no
today,
time for
you all
pretending.
have one as well at the oceanfront. Can you tell us a bit about the candlelit vigil that's going to take place?
Yes, the community will be getting together at the oceanfront by King Neptune statue. It's not a officially mandated event. It's kind of by word of mouth, because we really had to get together and commemorate the fallen heroes. uh, we'll be there exchanging our feelings, supporting each other, because I'm sure if I have these feelings today all day, many of all our community members have the same feelings. So last year we had similar event, and everyone spoke up. We remembered what we did on this day. Um, year prior, and now it will be 2 years. And like I said, for so many of us, it's day before and after. But I was also thinking about it. It's really difficult to think in bigger perspective, that there in Ukrainian history, there were so many days before and after leading up to this event. Like if we think in 2014, Revolution of Dignity, when Russia first time invaded Ukraine and took Crimea and occupied East Donetsk and Luhansk territories, that was also before and after. That was one of the wake-up calls for the global community. And that wake-up call was a little bit muted for some reason and glazed over, and didn't shake us to the core as it should have. Of course, this one is much more apocalyptic, and for Ukraine, it's a war of survival. It's existential fight for their own land. And again, looking back in the history, ever since uh, probably 16th century, but more so importantly of the modern state, since 1918, when end of World War I, and then creation of Soviet Union, like how incorporation of Ukrainian lands was taking place over time, and it was always a fight for existence, a fight for Ukrainian independence along the way, and it was always squished and squelched. And again, thinking about it, in many ways, the spirit of love for Ukrainian land was able to survive in big regard, thanks to our friends and allies abroad, Europeans, Americans, Canadians, because many waves of exile and waves of immigration from Ukraine were happening with every wave of either Russia or Soviets, and Russia again trying to eradicate Ukrainian spirit, Ukrainians. But Ukrainians who were able to survive would bring that spirit and just nurture it. It was protected in those democracies where they would land, either, again, America or Canada or in Europe, and then brought back when opportunity presented itself. That's why we know about the Holodomor. That's why we know about the uh, killed Renaissance. That's why we know about uh, all those dissidents that were eradicated and killed, because that was not taught as history during Soviet Union. So it was important to preserve that history, and it was preserved thanks to people who were safe and could help protect independence of Ukraine when opportunity presented.
And do you
And
think
so
that, preservation of history and that strength from history is something that has brought the community, at least the Ukrainian-American community and maybe Ukrainian community worldwide, closer because of that history?
absolutely, absolutely. And when I first came here 25 years ago, I immediately found this organization, Tedwater Ukrainian Cultural Association, which was founded by Ukrainians uh, in like second or third generation that were born here. Their parents were born here, sometimes grandparents, but whose relatives down the road came here, but they learned about culture, they learned about history, they learned the language, and their mission of this organization was supporting independence of Ukraine. So for years and generations, that was the primary mission: support independence of Ukraine. Even before it was independent, that was mission of every Ukrainian abroad that exiled and survived the genocide and the repressions of Soviet regime or Russian regime. It was very strong in Ukrainian diaspora. And I do think this big support across the globe when war started is what really helps Ukraine keep going. We cannot stop now. We have to continue the helping Ukrainians fight. We have, and I will get political here. We have to convince Congress to put this aid package for vote and vote yes and send Ukraine military aid it needs. It's important also to understand those who may be thinking it's a lot of money going to Ukraine. It's important to understand that only about 10 to 15% of that aid, like money wise, actually gets to Ukraine. A lot of it stays here and gets invested in defense industries and contracts and um, defense and civilian contracts likewise. So a lot of it boosts economy here in America. So even if you were even if you were a person who didn't believe in helping human beings survive war, you would at least believe in helping yourself and your economy. So there is like no reason not to support this aid package. We have to support it. We need to start sending aid to Ukraine because it's running out. And we saw it already earlier this week that a city of Avdiivka that was held for 10 years ever since first invasion in 2014 had to be relinquished to save Ukrainian heroes' lives um, because they had to, but they were out weaponed, so to say. They were, and those weapons, the weapons that we can send to Ukraine from the United States, it's really such a small such a small fraction of military aid that we were sending in the past to our allies during Cold War, and it's definitely a small fraction of the aid that we would have to send in the future if Ukraine does not survive this fight. So it's almost our existential need to support Ukraine, bring it to victory, because we cannot afford Ukraine not be victorious in this fight.
And I wanted to say too, there's a national walk that you all have shared on your Facebook page as well, the one in DC on Saturday. Is that something that people from the community in Hampton Roads are going to?
Yes, yes. This year, we decided that we will support a larger event in DC and travel there for a bigger impact on whoever is watching, to bring communities from all over the United States. Last year we did have a walk and rally, a big rally here in Norfolk. It was big, and we invited mayors and representatives, elected officials, offices. Was very well supported. But this year it's important to just make it big and make our stand, so people in Ukraine see that they're still supported and we are with them, and that people around the world see how Ukraine is supported and should be supported. There is no question about it. Um, there's just no other way. We also have a prayer service for Ukraine and Ukrainian church in Virginia Beach on Sunday. And you can find information about it on our social media sites, on Instagram and Facebook page. We have 2 upcoming workshops that also workshops for Ukraine, um, and fundraisers to support Ukrainian causes. The first one is Pisanka workshop. I'll be teaching it with my friend Joanna Griffith on Saturday, March 2nd at 3:30 in Virginia Beach. And we will have, and Pisanka is the very unique art of Ukrainian Easter egg making.
And I'm going to pull that up just while you're talking so people can see you creating them just last year.
Yes, like last year I made a lot of Pisanki with my family, and I also taught couple classes with my friend Joanna, because this is very when you create Pisanka, you create oberih, or like a lucky charm, I guess, for the lack of a better word, lucky charm for your family, for your country, for your community. Like you can write on it whatever you want with colors. You're working with raw egg there, and you use very strong special dyes. You layer them and hot wax, like you see that candle burning, and we're using special tool kistka. To write on it with wax, like over there, doing it.
And I imagine that's bringing, a tradition, I'm sure, that you kept from when you were younger here, and having it with the community here. That must be special. I mean, especially in this sort of darker time, to have those moments.
That is a great way to reconnect. And for some who have not experienced that art, and that's one of those instances when art was brought from Ukraine by diaspora in exile and preserved here. So in many cases, people had to relearn it when the new generations that came to the United States and spread around in America and Canada. So it's amazing craft, and it's therapeutic. And again, please come if you would like to learn more about it. Join us. Another workshop we'll have is on vareniki making. Vareniki is Ukrainian pirogis, and that will be on Sunday, on March 3rd, also in Virginia Beach. Again, all the events details on our Facebook and Instagram pages, and also on our website as well.
And for anyone watching and joining us right now on Facebook or YouTube, that is linked in the WAVY.com link, so you can find more information from the Facebook page for the association as well as your website. So people should be able to get right to it. And we're about out of time, and I know that you have to get ready to go to your Candleit vigil, but is there anything else that you just want to share today in light of the this anniversary that we're commemorating, or just in general for people to know about support?
Want to confirm again that the war in Ukraine is still going on. The threat is very real. That threat is not only to existence of Ukrainians and Ukrainian land, it's also to the rest of the world as well. We are grateful to communities in the world for continued support of this Ukrainian fight. And it's important to understand that we need to continue the support. We need to continue helping Ukrainians bring this fight to victory. Slava Ukraini.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, your very personal experience and story with us today. I know that it impacted me, and hopefully it impacts those viewers out there who either were not as aware of things going on every day or who are, and maybe this is just another motivator in that for them to, keep spreading the word of, what the news is every day. But thank you so much for joining us, especially in this difficult anniversary and then right before your Candleit vigil tonight.
I really appreciate your support and reaching out and covering this very important event for us. Thank you, Sarah.
Absolutely. And for anyone that's joining today, please head over to wavy.com to view more resources and to view more information about the events that we spoke about that are coming up as well, and just to be informed. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.